Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Seiben here for the Aether Hub, bringing you some more Magic the Gathering lore. This week on the Hub, Nizzahon is counting down the top 10 Merfolk cards in MTG. So to go along with that, I'll be examining the story behind this strange aquatic creature type. Now, I call Merfolk strange, but in fantasy genres, a race of submerged humanoids is actually pretty commonplace. Whether it be Atlanteans, Murlocs, Merpeople, or simply mermaids, the idea of cultured civilizations beneath the waves has shown up many times throughout history, especially in fantasy writing like the story of Magic the Gathering. Like goblins and humans, Merfolk were some of the original creatures we've seen on cards of MTG, and have been a pretty major tribe for most of the game's history. The creatures themselves have evolved a lot over time, not only taking into account the different environments of various planes, but also the continuity of playing, well, fish people on the battlefield. As planeswalkers summoning these fantastic beasts onto the battlefield, R&D of Wizards of the Coast felt at odds using these traditionally bottom-fin creatures in the game at all. They just didn't see it making much sense. Luckily, the player-based love for Merfolk kept them in the game, forcing developers to evolve the race artistically, with most now having more humanoid legs with fins rather than just a straight-up flipper. We as players had the power to change Merfolk, but so do the planes themselves. With so many different environments making up the multiverse, it's no surprise that Merfolk don't remain constant throughout them all. On Dominaria, the apex of the multiverse, Merfolk have splintered off into several different tribes and civilizations. The Merfolk of Dominaria are fairly similar to tales of the Atlanteans, that of being a proud and noble race capable of building and maintaining huge underwater empires, all while relatively staying out of the affairs occurring above the surface. Their origins, like many of the races, has been lost to history, with the general theory being that they were once elves or humans who adapted to live underwater, while Merfolk believe that humans or elves were once Merfolk who evolved to live on land. There isn't really a consensus on this one. Playing off the Atlantean theme, the Voldalian and Ortarian Merfolk were once masters of the depths, both controlling huge empires deep beneath the waves. Like all large empires, however, they were destined to fall. The Otarian Merfolk were once seen as the self-imposed superior race, belittling others like the octopus creatures known as the Cephalids. The Mer Empire fell, however, when one of their own, Ambassador Liquatus, betrayed them for personal power. By aiding in the replacement of Merfolk eggs with those of the Cephalids during a hatching ceremony, the balance of power was disrupted, and thus, the Otarian Merfolk faded to minority, while Liquatus went on to become the ambassador for the Cephalids. The Voldean Merfolk fell slightly after the global climate event known as the Ice Age. With dropping water temperatures, life became hard, and they were eventually pushed out by the Homerids, a race of sentient lobsters who thrived in the cooler seas. Luckily, not all were wiped out. Some actually survived past their queen, the Empress Galena, and now strike at the Homerids in remembrance of their once great civilization. Probably the most notable Merfolk race on Dominaria has to be Gia's Skyfolk, a strange race of flying Merfolk that existed during the time of the Phyrexian invasion. Little is known of their origins, but it's believed that they're at least some part Merfolk and some part Elvish, combining the natural abilities of both races. Historically on Dominaria, elves and merfolks despised one another, but during the Phyrexian invasions, those old feuds needed to be put aside for the greater whole of the world. Working together, the Skyfolk and elves managed to attack the Phyrexians efficiently from the air and sea, proving to be a valued force in the fight against the invasion. But as the Phyrexians attacked Dominaria, they too had access to this creature type in their ranks. Well, kinda sorta. On the Phyrexian artificial world of Rath, built by the Phyrexians to be a staging point for their invasion, some Merfolk were accidentally sucked up through overlays. Evolving on this new, more hostile environment, the Merfolk lived in an area known as Rootwater, a sea that nourished a massive forest. Among its dense root system and dark mud, the Rootwater Merfolk evolved into hideous aquatic monsters, looking more like eels than fish and becoming extremely aggressive. They would eventually return to Dominaria through the Rathy overlay, but the change was seemingly permanent. The world of Ravnica thought their race of merfolk had gone extinct, as the ever-growing megacity that gives this plane its name slowly swallowed even the great oceans. With no real access to the seas, the merfolk weren't seen for several years. That is, until sinkholes started to appear throughout the city. Using these as ports to the surface, the merfolk of Ravnica again sprang forth and found a new home within the Simic Combine. Following an ideology of constant evolution, merfolk of the Simic hope to propel their own species to become more adept to the surface city of Ravnica. The High Speaker of the Simic, Zigana, is a merfolk herself, proving that despite being blocked off, this race is no less intelligent or ambitious than others on Ravnica. On the plane of Mercadia, the merfolk were, like on Rath, transported there from Dominaria. This time, years ago, the race traveled aboard the interplanar dragon engine Ramos in order to escape the inevitable destruction that would be the Brothers' War. On Mercadia, the merfolk refugees built the city of Saprazo and developed an intricate political system while also becoming extremely religious. With Mercadia City falling to corruption, the Saprazo merfolk aided a number of human allies in overthrowing the ruling class known as the Kirin. Merfolk on the plane of Shandalar fit into the traditional mold for this creature type, at least for the most part, but they're led by an ambitious leader known as Talrend. With the majority of their deep kingdoms overthrown by Talrend, the merfolk king wasn't satisfied with merely ruling just below the waves. Using some unknown ancient power, Talrend turned his gaze skywards as he controlled drakes and bound them to his will, in a sense, conquering the skies of Shandalar. He's now known as Talrend the Sky Summoner. The plane of Lorwyn takes the idea of merfolks and morphs it into, well, something more akin to a profession than a creature type. Here, they're known as Marrows, and they are the chief controllers of commerce and trade routes on the entire plane. Lorwyn is connected extensively through crossing rivers and streams, which the Marrows create and maintain through magic, traveling them with unbelievable speed, making them ideal for trade. As with anyone in this type of field, Marrows are typically friendly and approachable, willing to help anyone for maybe a little extra coin. Since commerce, shipping, and trade is such a complex field, Marrows have been divided into 5 schools, which all specialize in a different service. These schools are known as the Paperfins, Silvergills, Stonybrooks, Inkfathom, and Weirwinders. But of course, Lorwyn isn't your typical plane, as it has its dark counterpart known as Shadowmoor. When the plane takes on this darker persona, it changes its residents, Marrows included. No longer are they peaceful merchants. The Marrows on Shadowmoor become murderous cutthroats, brigands, and thieves, looking to steal anything remotely valuable from those who venture too close to the river's edge. This change can be seen in the prominent Marrow Sig, whose full name is almost unpronounceable. Sig Guren Galalala Silvar. Well, that probably lost me 10 subscribers instantly. Anyway, on Lorwyn, Sig was a well-respected ferryman who helped a number of important characters across some of the most dangerous waterways on the plane. Yet on Shadowmoor, he's transformed into a cutthroat pirate obsessed with personal power and wealth. A perfect example of the change this plane and all its inhabitants go through with the Great Aurora. Yet, Shadowmoor has an even stranger type of merfolk, those known as the Selkies. Only existing in Shadowmoor, these merfolk don't have fish features, but rather those of a seal, making them an odd amphibious hybrid. Personality-wise, Selkies are cold and spiteful, feeling confined to the small lakes and rivers of the plane, wanting tragically to spread to deeper waters like oceans, which don't even exist on the plane. So, half seal people who are perpetually sad. Yeah, Lorwyn/Shadowmoor is a really odd plane. On the plane of Theros, a world ruled by powerful gods, the merfolk are known as tritons, and they've evolved a culture and physiology unique to them. Unlike most other merfolk, the tritons have 2 legs and walk upright while on land. They're still incredible swimmers due to their fins and webbed appendages, but they're also able to walk freely on the surface. They're truly amphibious creatures. Yet, it's not their bodies which set them apart, it's their religion. Their worship of the Theros god of the sea, Thassa. Thassa is Lord of the Sea and God of the Tritons, taking the form of a merfolk herself. Using her enchanted Bident, Tikala, Thassa freely controls the flow of the plane's oceans and currents, stirring great beasts from beneath the waves and sending massive tidal floods to shore. The Tritons believe they are descendants of this great figure and work to do her bidding, but since those days, Thassa's lost a great deal of power and influence, since her awesome Bident was stolen from her. Who could steal from a god, you ask? Well, another merfolk, of course. Only this one didn't hail from Theros. She was a planeswalker, Kiora. Kiora is a native of Zendikar, a plane cursed to house the sleeping interplanar devourers of worlds known as the Eldrazi. The merfolk of Zendikar are playful, curious, and mischievous, worshipping avatars who control various aspects of the world. The Angel M, who controls the Sky Realm, Ula, who rules the Underwater Realm, and Cozy, the Trickster God. Naturally, most merfolk praise Ula for shaping and maintaining their underwater homes, but some have splintered to worshipping Cozy, and taking joy in his, prankster nature. Yet, all these figures were just lies, shallow idols of what they truly represented, the Eldrazi Titans, Emrakul, Ulamog, and Kozilek, who, once freed, threatened to destroy the whole of Zendikar. With the facade lost, the Titans awoke and wreaked havoc on the plane, causing the very soil and waves to heave in pain. Merfolk of Zendikar, along with being great explorers like the Ruin Diver Jorian, are also adept royal mages, beings who use magic to tame the angry reaction the plane had to the presence of the Eldrazi. Through these royals, mages like Nor and Dar could bend the land's anger to a purpose, in most cases killing the Eldrazi and their hideous spawn. While the merfolk of Zendikar had to sit and face this threat, one had the ability to leave and seek help from other worlds. This was the Planeswalker Kiora. She stole the Great Bident from Thassa, not for personal power, but in hopes of using it to defeat the Eldrazi. The Bident at first refused to work on the foreign seas, but would soon bend to Kiora's will. While she had great power, the Planeswalker wasn't much for teamwork or cooperation. Her passion left her at odds with the Gatewatch, a group of Planeswalkers also on Zendikar to defeat the Eldrazi, leading Kiora to go against their plans and set the entire plane at risk. Although her heart was in the right place, history would see her as a stubborn force which almost ruined everything. The last we saw of her, she walked away from her home, now saved by others, in disgrace. There is one last merfolk I'd like to discuss before wrapping up this lore lesson. Waterfront Bouncer from Mercadia asks, I bring this guy up because Nizzahon had some trouble with coming to terms that this thing is actually a merfolk. Yes, I know it's technically a spell shaper in this print, but as it was reprinted in Vintage Masters, it was officially changed to a merfolk spell shaper. So the Waterfront Bouncer is indeed a merfolk, only one who has more humanistic features than many others on the plane of Mercadia. Well, Nizzahon and anyone else interested in this buff fishman, ladies, here's why Waterfront Bouncer looks the way he does. First, the elephant in the room. He has legs opposed to a fin. Well, remember, Mercadian merfolk were once natives of Dominaria, where merfolk had the power to magically grant themselves legs and the ability to breathe on land for short periods of time. This was displayed by Ambassador Laquatus, and was the chief reason why he gained the position. Laquatus had the ability to change his anatomy much quicker than other merfolk, making him the perfect ambassador to the surface world. So, since merfolk of Dominaria could sprout legs through magic, it's sensible to say that those who traveled to Mercadia could do the same. This particular merfolk became a spell shaper, which is a type of mage who specializes in one spell and that's it, using their skill in that single spell to compensate for their lack of diversity. In the bouncer's case, he really likes bouncing, and apparently hitting the gym, thus explaining probably the most obscure merfolk in Magic the Gathering. Merfolk are as strange as you can get beneath the waves of the planes found in the multiverse of Magic the Gathering. Their deep secrets are known only to them, and they usually stay away from conflicts occurring on the surface. But when they do poke their heads out, breaking the veil, this creature type certainly can make massive waves, especially in regards to the storylines of MTG. Let us here at the Aether Hub know what your favorite merfolk is from the lore. Leave that in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, consider supporting the hub by giving it a like, sharing it with friends, and of course subscribing for more awesome MTG content. If you haven't gotten enough of your fish people fix, remember to check out Nizzahon's video on the top 10 Merfolk cards here on the Aether Hub linked at the end of this video and in the description below. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here on the Aether Hub.